Okay, for those of you who are visiting, we are studying Christian evidences, and that has to do with evidences for, excuse me, the existence of God, the inspiration of the Bible, and the deity of Christ. And we are still on the existence of God section, and we're looking at three main arguments for God's existence. One called the cosmological argument that takes its starting point in the general characteristics of the world, like its contingency, it's dependent on something and everything in the world. And the mark of that we studied was change. And now we're looking at what's called the teleological argument, more popularly known as the argument to design. And so I introduced this last week. The argument goes like this. If there's order and adjustment or arrangement in the world, then there's design. And if there's design, there's a designer. And then you establish there is order and arrangement in the world, and therefore you conclude that there's design. And as soon as you reach that conclusion, then you can maintain that there's a designer. Now, in preparing for this today, I went through some things that I found I wanted to mention to you to discuss the order and the arrangement. Okay? And so listen up. Here's just a few things I found. If the earth was any other size than it is, life could not exist. If the earth was the size of the moon, the force of gravity would fail to hold both the atmosphere and water. If the earth were the size of the sun, evaporation of water would be impossible, and atmospheric pressure would exceed a ton per square inch. Now, I don't know how they know all that, but that's, scientific findings. Okay, here's another one. The earth is the right distance from the sun. If it was farther away, life would freeze, and if it was closer, life would be burned up. Not only is the earth the right distance, it is the right distance with the right angle. The earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees. If it was not tilted at that angle, polar latitudes would be, and here's one of those words I have trouble with, uninhabitable, uninhabitable. Say that for me. Wow, Barbara, that's really good. I have trouble with that word and then that other word. The snowman, that word, and I get hung up on those words. And then that word I said Brother Earl Edwards wanted to have for the lectureship at Freed Hardeman concerning God, the unfathomable. Say it, John. Unfathomable. Did you hear that? Just rolls off. Okay, at any rate, it'd be hot, okay? Winds of 100 miles per hour would rush from the equators to the poles, and there'd be no seasons, therefore no life. And then we talked about this last week. The carbon dioxide cycle between plants and animals is perfectly balanced. Plants, by means of photosynthesis, that's where I mentioned last week, convert carbon dioxide into carbohydrates, a food essential for animal nutrition. When consumed by man and animals, carbohydrates undergo a series of chemical reactions and are once again converted into carbon dioxide, which is exhaled. The carbon dioxide is incorporated again by plants into carbohydrates. Well, it's crazy, isn't it? So that's arrangement in order. The earth also has the right amount of water. I had not really thought about this at one time. Water covers 75% of the earth's surface. Water is an unusual substance possessing extraordinary properties. If water did not possess the properties that it does, it would not support life. Water differs from most liquids in that when it solidifies, it floats instead of sinking. This is due to the arrangement of the atoms in the water molecule. Disastrous consequences would follow if ice sank instead of floating. Under such conditions, the rivers and lakes would freeze from the bottom, thus destroying life. There would be less evaporation, resulting in great droughts. Have y'all ever thought about this water deal?
It would also flood the world.
John, speak up.
It would flood the world ice would go down and water would go up and it would flood us.
Well, I hadn't thought about that.
Also, the water cycle on the earth and how it affects weather. Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes, all the rivers flow into the sea, and yet the sea is not full.
No matter evaporation.
From where the rivers came, they return again.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful piece of science there.
Right.
Written that long ago.
I was wondering about this one day, and I've never seen it written anywhere. Of course, I haven't researched it as deeply as I, could. But what do you just think about this idea? Is there, I'm going to put it in a question form, is there any more water on the earth than there has ever been?
No.
I see yeses and nos.
Matter can't be created and can't be destroyed. It's always been here. It may be in a different form than it once was, but you can't add one atom to the earth. It was all originally here. We have cars, but they weren't cars before they were cars.
Yeah, that might be on a little different level than water, though, Mickey. I'm thinking of, like, say, you could take a piece of wood and you could burn it and it becomes ashes. I know it still exists, but it does not exist, as a piece of wood. Robert had his hand up. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody did. Who did? Was there a hand over there? Brother Law.
Yeah, there in Genesis 1 where it talks about the firmament, that was above the earth until the flood in Genesis. So you had water above the earth, you didn't have it on the earth.
Well, I thought the firmament was the technical word to separate the waters above from the waters below.
That's right, expand.
Okay, well, in your rate, do you know the name James Bales, J.D. Bales? He was a professor of mine when I transferred from Freed-Hardeman to Harding. He was in a debate that I have read, the Bales-Teller debate, and Brother Bales wrote this: if there had been 10% less ocean basin or 10% more water, life on earth would be impossible. And then another professor in his book, The Universe and God, such an arrangement, speaking of water in the land, such an arrangement is the very last thing we would expect in the case of a planet which was quietly cooled down from a molten state and then became covered with water. It suggests that the world is not as simple as we thought, that something intervened. I thought that was a pretty good statement. So many essential conditions are necessary for life to exist on our earth that it is mathematically impossible that all of them could exist in proper relation by chance on any one earth at one time. So it's not like, this part could be created and then, 100,000 years later are not created. One part, quote, evolve, and then 100,000 years later, another part evolve. I've often thought of that in conjunction with the at least atheistic evolutionist claim of the origin of human beings. So let's say, given their argument, I'm getting ahead of myself because I did want to spend one class period on that, but suppose that this entity evolved and it had a respiratory system, but does it not need a circulatory system? And would it not need, all the other systems? What about a reproductive system? Hello? I mean, what if that didn't come along for like 500,000 years or whatever? I mean, it's just nonsense, really. Okay, any comment before we go on?
It also needs, if you had this, if you want to say miraculous, probably not the right word, life appear, it needs something else to be alive. Because whether it's a plant, whether it's an animal, it needs to intake something that's been alive. If you take soil and microwave it and put your seeds in there, it isn't going to grow. because you destroyed anything that was alive in the soil, and the plant needs that.
Okay. So the bottom line, it all has to happen at one time. Make sense? Any comment? Anybody like to contribute? Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, brother.
Talk about order and fine tuning. Gravity is the basic force behind which all other things are measured. It is not as strong as any other force in the universe. And yet, if you were to decrease gravity, take a football field, 300 yards, by 1 inch, the entire universe would cave in on itself, or if it was expanded, it would go the other direction and fly apart.
Wow. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's finely tuned. And you think about it, everything's finely tuned.
Yes.
What about our human bodies? You know, as we already quoted in here, David said, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. How marvelous are your works. So, and they're finding, it's amazing to me, the complexity of the human body and how more and more, things are discovered, every day. How long has DNA been discovered? They're making advancements all the time with DNA, but what's it been around? How many decades?
1956.
56, Mickey says. Okay.
They couldn't use it to solve crimes till way later.
Okay, Linda says it was not used to solve crimes at that time. Okay. Pretty crazy. We listen going home at night frequently to forensic files. Y'all ever listen to that? When you're on the road, and they'll say something like, concerning some evidence, DNA was not discovered, yet, or the ability for DNA to address a particular, thing that they're, trying to find out, was not in force yet. Now, I have the illustration here of a watch. This idea comes from William Paley. Do you know that name? He wrote on Christian Evidences a long time ago. And Paley, used the watch as an illustration. Just imagine, if someone just discovers a watch and opens it up, looks at it, all of its details, and this wheel going to the right in turn affecting another wheel that goes to the left, and that in turn affecting another wheel and a gear, and so forth and so on. It's just ridiculous to think that just happened. Of course, my favorite illustration is imagine a tornado going through a junkyard, or going through not even a junkyard, but that'll do. And then when it's over with, you have this really fine, say BMW or Mercedes-Benz or whatever, appearing on the outskirts of it. That's just absurd, isn't it? Now that may be too simple for some of you sophisticated learners, but that works for me. Okay, and everything I just talked about is right here. Now that may not just be exactly the degree thing. I had a piece of plastic and some circles, and so give me a break, okay? But you see what I was trying to do. And we talked about this, the earth tilted on its axis, the moon being about, 240,000 miles away, and the earth and the moon going around the sun every 365, 1/4 days and so forth. Question, comment? Okay.
David?
Yes, sir.
The last verse of Genesis, God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good.
Right.
That includes everything,
It's good.
right?
Sir?
That includes everything.
That's right. Everything that the Lord made anyway. Unfortunately, men have made some things that are not so good, right? Okay, so what we've been talking about has to do, I actually divided my thoughts up into two areas. The inorganic realm, which is what we've just been talking about, all these material, things. And then you could switch to the organic realm, and I've already sort of, put those two realms together, where we would look at, the human body. And I don't have, I used to have some transparencies, where I showed different pictures, of things, like say a skeletal system or just, any number of things like that. But I think given our time and given this incredible class, I think we're convinced. What about it? Okay? But same thing that we did with the world and so forth, you could do with, you just take the human body and you could just start, looking at different things. I read a book back in the 70s, let me think. I believe it was put out by Reader's Digest, maybe, Your Body and How It Works. Any of you ever read that book? Never have? Okay, you have? Okay. Anyway, it's really good. It'll have, a chapter about, the skeleton, a chapter about musculatory system. It'll have a chapter about the endocrine system, different chapters. Okay, now, let's talk about the problem of evil. What is called the problem of evil. Now, here's the so-called problem. The so-called problem is this. God, given the existence of God and given God's attributes, namely that God is infinite. Let me put this up here. Okay, he's infinite. We're finite, correct? You can see it here. Infinite. In from the Latin carries the negation idea. Okay? So God is not finite, and He is infinite in His attributes. He's infinite in His power. He's infinite in His love. He's infinite in His presence. Etc. So He's omnipotent. That's a word for power. He is omnibenevolent. Omnibenevolent from two Latin words. Let me just put them up here. You know these words, don't you? Amen? Okay. This is, put it in the wrong place. Yep, no, it's not close. It's not right. It's got to be right. Can't be having that. Notice the elder said that. Okay. Well, it's capital letters. Well, it's not capital letters, is it? Okay. I usually write in capital letters on a board. And here I mixed it up, didn't I? Okay. So this is, that means all powerful. And then omnibenevolent. Who's had Latin in here? Who's had Latin? Mary?
Too many years ago.
Well, mine was in 63 and 64. Larry?
I've had it, but I only remember one word.
Well, when did you have it? Like 38, 39? Okay, who's had French? I know a bunch of you had French.
I didn't only remember one word.
I want to know what the word is.
He's wanting to hook you on that.
Can you tell us what the word is, Larry?
It's agricola in Latin, which was farmer. That's the only one I learned, and comment in French was, you make a comment.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that exciting rendition. I had 2 years of Latin in high school. I took French and German at Tennessee Tech, and so I took my French exam at UT for my degree in April of '79. But there was, some of you went to Tech. Any of you remember Dr. Jones? He was the French teacher. He might have taught other classes, I don't know. But at any rate, it's so funny. I was sitting on the front row, as you might expect, front seat, and then there was this girl in the next row on the front seat. Have I told them this? Anyway,
Tell her she's from.
yeah, sweet little girl, young lady, I should say, from Crossville. And I'd never been to Crossville or anything. And I just got so tickled one day because I'm from Mississippi and I have a very strong accent, but not as strong as, you know, my fellow Mississippians. I think it's because I left in 1967 and I've studied under professors from Vienna and Hungary and everywhere else, and I might have got some of my Mississippi brogue out. But anyway, hopefully not too much. But at any rate, so I'm thinking, you know, folks in the class could barely understand me, you know, at least some of them. And so this young lady, the teacher was asking us words and what their meanings, you know, were. And so he asked about this one word, méchant. Put in English letters, M-E-C-H-A-N-T. And she volunteered to give the meaning of it. And Dr. Jones said, you know, called her name and gave her the word, méchant. And she said, wicked. And I got so tickled. But I mean, not out loud, but I was tickled because I thought, I have met like a fellow, a fellow hick, you know, if you would. But at any rate, okay, well, here we go. This part means all, and then the bendy part, who can tell me, means good, and then the valent part, it's from the Latin volare, which means to will or to wish. So if you break that word down, it means that God is omnibenevolent, or He wishes everything good. He wishes all good, okay? And in His omnipresence, there's not really omnipresent, yeah, but that's pretty simple. And then His knowledge would be omniscient, okay? All right, but let's look at these couple here. So omnipotent. So what's being said? He's all powerful. That means that He can do everything that can be done. Now, I like to say it that way because there's some things that are just logically impossible to do. Name one, Larry.
He cannot go against his will, that's where you're going.
Okay. Well, He can't pick up a rock so big that He can't lift it. I mean, He can't make a rock so big that He can't lift it. God cannot do anything that's logically contradictory. I had a person just argue with me one time, oh, God can do everything. God can do everything. I said, no, He can't. Why He can too? And I said, well, turn to your Bible. I said, you can go to 1 Samuel 15:29 or Titus 1:2, or you can go to Hebrews 9:18. Just suit your fancy and read it. God cannot lie. Is it 9:18? Somebody check me on that. I'm pretty sure that's right. Every now I'm getting these blanks occasionally that I don't ever. I was rememorizing my verses for my sermon this morning, and I'm embarrassed to say I couldn't remember how John 14:1-3 starts. What is it? Let not your heart be troubled. I had to actually look it up. I thought, you dummy, what's wrong with my brain? Is that right? It's not right, is it, John?
9:18.
All right, look at 6:18.
You said 1 Samuel, didn't you?
No, 1 Samuel is 1 Samuel 15:29. I said the Hebrews passage.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Sorry, we got a 6:18? Okay. So see, now my brain is thinking an upside down 9 or an upside down 6, right? Okay. So here's the argument then from the atheist. If God is all powerful, then what? Can you read? He could. Thank you, Jerry. He could remove all evil. Okay? If He is all loving, omnibenevolent, He would remove all evil. But what?
Evil exists.
But evil is here. Nobody disputes that, correct? And so their conclusion is, well, either he couldn't get rid of it, or what? He allowed it to happen. Make sense? So that's the problem. So either he's not omnipotent or he's not omnibenevolent. And that does not need a space in the omnibenevolent word there. Now, they have different responses to this. One response is that, well, okay, let's sort of lighten up a little bit on saying that God is infinite in these attributes. What is it, Brother Law?
He wouldn't be God.
Okay, but then he would not be the infinite God, of the Bible, the God that we worship, right? So I'm not willing to give on any of that. So what do we have to do then?
Free will.
We have to give a logical explanation as to how.
Evil exists.
Okay? All right? So, all right. Now, I like this first statement. Some people disagree with this. I mean, I know the atheistic world does, but I've even had some brethren. But the world is the best of all possible worlds for God's purposes in creation. There's a scholar by the name of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, German philosopher. For those of you mathematicians, are you willing to show your hands? I know we got some smart mathematicians in here. Well, be thankful to Mr. Leibniz, who came up with calculus. Yay! Huh? Okay. Well, that's the guy, and he was a brilliant person.
Calculus is not math.
Okay. You didn't see me.
I know what math is.
Yeah.
Ain't it.
Hey, you didn't see me raise my hand, Doug. Okay, I'm not a math person. What is the distinction? Don't know?
I never figured it out.
Oh, okay.
I still don't know why I had to take it.
Well, I guess I had it in that domain because I know I had Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and plane geometry.
They claim it is.
Yeah, and I had solid geometry and trigonometry, and then I had an analytics course, all this in high school, and then the next thing was calculus. So I thought it was in the math world. Okay, any rate, Mr. Leibniz is the one that came up with this statement. Now notice, it's the best of all possible worlds for the purposes that God had in His creation. You see what I'm saying? See, I can immediately hear some of you saying, yeah, but what about suffering? And what about cancer? And what about children being taken advantage of? And what, we could go down the list with thousands and thousands of things that we think are evil. But we just have to sort of be cautious about that, I think.
He wasn't trying to make heaven. Heaven already existed.
Right. I think what we have to understand, we sing it all the time. This world is not my home. Here we are, but what? Straying pilgrims. This is not the end. This is not the end, is it? No. I like to say it this way. We're on probation right now. Any of y'all been on probation? Don't answer that. Okay. What's academic probation?
Get your act together.
You are being expelled for a semester or a year or whatever for you to, get your act together. Think about, do I want to be a good student in college or not? How about disciplinary? That's scarier to me than academic.
Well, probation's not suspension. Probation is your warning period to keep trying.
Yeah.
Suspension is when you get thrown out.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm talking about probation. Steve?
Well, if you hire on a job, most people are under a 6 or a year's probation.
Okay.
You are being tried out to see if you qualify to be a full-time employee.
And what does that mean?
It means
If you're on, yeah,
you're not a real employee, you're just a trying out period.
okay,
And you can be let go at any
okay. All right, now, I say that we're on probation here because this is our time on this earth to make up our minds whether we're going to love and obey God or not. This is our time. We're not going to have another time, are we? Well, can I get another probation period? No. This is it. And so I like to speak of it as a probationary period. Okay, now what was God's purpose? His one purpose was to create a being that could enter into fellowship with Him. I just finished a paper, thank the Lord. And it's kind of historical in a way because it's my last writing assignment in my entire life. Hopefully. I really hope that's the case because I really, don't wish to write anymore. I've written 50-something years. Anyway, it was on lessons from Adam and Eve. And I divided it's for the lectureship that's coming March this year instead of February. Anyway, I divided it up into Genesis 1 through 3 into these sections. God, the Creator, and then the purposes that He had in creation, or the purposes of His commandments, and then Satan enters the picture, and then they transgress God's law. But I started out like this. I said, God, and I was thinking about all this material, God had one single purpose, and that was to create a being that He could have communion with, create a being that He could have fellowship with. And then I made these points. If you think about it, already in the Godhead, you got the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? Okay, I get to thinking about stuff like this. Why did God make anything? I mean, why did He make anything whatsoever? I mean, He knew that a lot of the beings that would come into this world would be a disappointment to Him, did He not? He knew that. He knew that they wouldn't enter into fellowship with Him. Well, I think that He created the world and human beings. That's really what He wanted. The world was chronologically made before man, but man was logically prior, to the world. Man's what He had in mind. And really He had ultimately what in mind? The church, for which His Son died. And so my argument has been this, that there was already a community existing, a community of fellowship among whom? The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, a community where love abounded. And so I've argued that things came about out of love. What does love do? Love begets love. And so I believe that God created, human beings, out of love. We don't want to say that God created, the earth or human beings or whatever, Brother Elon, because He needed to. He didn't need to do that. Brother Doug?
Acts 17, whenever.
Yeah, read that.
Can I read that? Okay, Acts 17, starting 26. And He has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord,
Right.
and hope that they might grope for Him and find Him, though He is not far from each one of us.
Yeah, and I put that in my paper. That's Acts 14, 17?
17.
17, okay. Well, what's 14, 17? Look that up for me. I think that's where He says He does not leave Himself without witness.
Nevertheless, He did not leave Himself without witness,
Yeah.
and He did good, gave us rain.
Right. 14, 17, He did not leave Himself without witness. And what I say there is He left His fingerprints here. See, everything we just talked about the world and all, Mickey, that's His fingerprints. In our human body, that's His fingerprints. But anyway, let's see now, where was I? Good point. Oh yeah, he made man to seek him. Now if you think about it, we're wired to seek God. We're really wired, as it were, to seek God. We're made that way. Augustine, one of my favorite theologians, said, what was it, around the 4th century? Our hearts are restless until they find rest in Thee. Our hearts are restless till they find rest in Thee. So God made us such that we want to be happy. But the only problem is, so many people seek happiness in all the wrong places. That's a country song, isn't it? Or something. What is it? Okay. Sister Tracy knows this song. Looking for love in all the wrong places. Okay. So God wants us to be happy. He made us to be happy. He wants us to seek happiness. But He wants us to understand that the only source of true happiness is having a proper relationship with Him. Entering into fellowship with Him. Got a comment on that? Anybody? Okay, now, to have this being, a human being, to enter into a relationship with Him, He had to allow them at least the choice to not enter into a relationship with Him. Now just think about it. Doug, He could have made all of us a bunch of robots, couldn't He? He could have made us where we, out of necessity, seek to worship Him. Out of necessity that we love Him. Out of necessity that we seek fellowship with Him. But every one of us knows that would not be a true expression of love. Would it? Of course it wouldn't. So you can't have true love expressed unless you have a choice. And that choice was given to Adam and Eve in the garden. You see, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is not just about a bunch of trees. The tree of knowledge of good and evil is not just about a bunch of fruit. The thing about those two trees is choice. That was the choice, the way that God gave Adam and Eve the opportunity to make a choice to either obey Him or not obey Him. And the sin of Eve and of Adam also, ultimately, was not just eating a piece of fruit. I mean, that was the catalyst of it, as it were. But the sin was seeking to be independent of God. You see what I'm saying? Essentially, I'm saying this. They chose to seek their own way. They chose to be autonomous. They chose to say, we don't want to go your way, we want to go our way. And eating this piece of fruit is proof that that's what we want to do. All right, love you. Thanks a bunch.